Father and Son, USN Retired. The Life Stories of Quintin RAMIL Sr. and Jr. by Quintin R. RAMIL Jr. Published by Papyrus Books. Email papyrusbooks@yahoo.com. Dedication. Father and Son, USN Retired is dedicated to my wife Teresita, who stood behind me during this writing. To my children, Ram, Ray, Tressie, and Roxanne, who encouraged me to write my family's story. To my grandchildren, Riley Jane Kopka, Shane Reese RAMIL, Madeline Page Snowden, Reagan Therese Kopka, Reese James RAMIL Kopka, Elizabeth Quinn Snowden, and Michael RAMIL Snowden, so that they may know where their grandfather came from. By Quint RAMIL Jr., author of the book Father and Son, USN Retired, The Life Stories of Quintin RAMIL Sr. and Jr. Acknowledgements. I want to acknowledge my family and friends, especially my nieces who kept asking me how we are related to each other. To my friends Mario and Purita Firm, Janet and Lillian, who were stranded with Tara and me on one of the Caramoan Islands off Naga, Camarines Sur, Philippines. Because of the weather condition, we could not visit the other islands and were advised to just stay put. We spent many hours just telling stories. I told them the story of my father, fathering a child during the war, and they encouraged me to write a story about it. To my co-senior mentor for San Diego County, Ms. Vicki Anders, who encouraged me and gave me pointers on how to make it an interesting book. To my Ine, mother in Filipino, who always kept a journal and is really the writer in our family. By Quint RAMIL Jr. About the author. Quintin R. RAMIL Jr. retired from the U.S. Navy as a chief legal man. He was formerly a chief radio man, having served on board several submarines and was a Navy instructor. He attended Manila Central University, Manila Law College, and Palomar College, and holds a certificate as a Registered Certified Financial Advisor, RCFA, from Clayton University. He is a proud father of 4 children. Quintin, 3, and Ramon graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy, class of 86 and 88, respectively. Tressie graduated from California State University, Long Beach, with a degree in education, and Roxanne graduated from California State University, Sacramento, with a degree in communications studies. Quint's in-depth training includes special real estate courses such as Floyd Wickman's Sweat Hogs, real estate practice, economics, financing, property management, legal practice, real estate investments, and creative financing. He was the founder and charter president of the U.S. Naval Academy Parents Club of San Diego and the Phil Am Toastmasters Club of San Diego, number 9493. He holds the title of Advanced Communicator, Gold, and Community Leader. Quint and his wife of more than 50 years, Teresita Roxas RAMIL, are active in Airman's Chapel Marine Corps Air Station Miramar as choir members, reader, and Eucharistic minister, respectively. He enjoys group singing, golf, gardening, grandparenting to their 7 grandchildren, dancing, and traveling all over the world. And he also loves to tell jokes. Introduction stories. The true ones are interesting in how they develop. Some stories are buried and forgotten, some are put away for years and slowly surface, and some are gathered and released in a book because someone said that was the thing to do. Such is the case with this book. People said it was time, and more importantly, that it needed to be done. Of course, with a book, an honest book, skeletons are undoubtedly going to come out of the closet. For instance, recently while I was stranded with some friends on an island off Naga, province of Camarines Sur, Philippines, I told them the story of my dad fathering a child out of wedlock during the war, and they all implied there may be other stories there as well. So, I tried to start this, but for some reason I kept postponing it. Maybe some of those skeletons weren't ready to come out yet. Who knows? But one day opportunity presented itself. I had to get some things done in the Philippines by myself, and I found the time to do it. I had no more excuses. This is the result of that very focused time, encompassing more than 74 years. This includes time from my father and his stories, and my stories, have all wrapped up in family. I was the only one of 7 children who followed my father's footsteps, which included time on board U.S. Navy ships. Please understand this is not a sailor's diary. This is a glimpse behind the scenes of a family, friends, and neighbors who, in ways both large and small, shaped part of the world in which we live in. Some names have been intentionally changed to protect the innocent. Prologue. Every family has its members and friends, those who help create the story. These are some of mine. My grandfather, Emeterio Ramil, was born in the barrio of Carino, town of Paniqui, province of Tarlac in the Philippines. He was married to Maria Apuan from the town of Anao, Tarlac, and they had 6 children. The oldest, a daughter, Valentina, was married to Pablo Llanos, whose ancestors were from Bacara, Ilocos Norte, as were the Ramils. The second child, a son named Lope, settled in the town of Cuyapo, province of Nueva Ecija, after marrying Imen Reginaldo. The third child, a son Pedro, became a minister of the IEMILIF, Iglesia Evangelica Metodista in Las Islas Filipinas Church, a local version of the Methodist Church, and married Maria Bernardino from the town of Novaliches, city of Caloocan, in the province of Rizal. He was assigned as a pastor in the town. The fourth child, Quintin, was named after his uncle, Quintin Apuan, locally known as Pop by the Americans, as he had a fatherly look and owned a bar in Pasay, a city in the outskirts of Manila. The fifth, a daughter, Rosalia, never married and was active as a deaconess in the Methodist Church in the town of Paniqui, Tarlac. The sixth, a daughter named Consolacion, was a nurse who graduated from Mary Johnston Hospital in the town of Tondo, city of Manila. She encouraged my mother to give birth at Mary Johnston Hospital. She served in the Philippine Army Nurse Corps during the war. Living on a farm, Quintin helped his father tend to the animals. His primary duties were to make sure that their carabaos or water buffaloes were taken to the river at least once a day, where they would drink, wade, and swim and were given a scrubbing. The family raised rice and a variety of vegetables like tomatoes, squash, bitter melons, eggplants, and many more. They also had several coconut trees. I still remember my grandfather bringing all these goodies to their home in Novaliches in the 1950s. Once, while Quintin was herding his team of carabaos, he found himself in the middle of a swollen river. The animals were having a difficult time crossing and were actually being swept by the strong current. He almost drowned, but managed to keep the animals together and successfully crossed the river. After graduating from high school, he was informed by his older brother Pedro that a new dam will be constructed in Novaliches. They were hiring anyone old enough, but they will be required to have their own carabao and cart, and of course a shovel and a pick. He did not waste any time. He borrowed a cart from his oldest brother, Lope, and with one of the family carabaos, he gathered his menial belongings and proceeded to travel from Carino to Novaliches, a suburb in the city of Caloocan. He traveled during the day and camped out by the roadside at night. I am still amazed as to how he managed to reach Novaliches, which was about 120 kilometers away. It took him more than a month before he reached Novaliches. He stayed with his brother while working at what is now known as La Mesa Dam Eco Park. It was at this time when he met Fausta M. Reyes, a seamstress working at a haberdashery store owned by a Mr. Zacharias Biglang-Awa, a relative. Fausta is the daughter of Reverend Arcadio Reyes, also a minister of the Philippine version of the Methodist Church, and was also assigned in Novaliches as co-pastor of Pedro Ramil. Quintin met the daughter of the co-pastor of his brother. She was only 17 years old. He saw her almost every Sunday in church. It was very common for the pastors and their family to have lunch together after the service, and that was the opportunity for him to get to know her better. Arcadio was single when he married Gregoria Matos, a widow with 2 young children, the oldest, a daughter named Onang, and a son, Martin. Onang lived with her family in the town of Marikina and was always a welcome sight when she visited our family. She would always have goodies for us. Arcadio and Gregoria had 3 children of their own. The oldest, a girl they named Fausta. The second and third, both boys, were named Mateo or Tayong and Canuto or Otong respectively. Canuto died at an early age. He was walking in a rice field when a deadly snake struck him. This was very common in the Philippines. He left a wife, Maxima Franco Reyes, and 2 children, a son named Ruben and a daughter, Gloria. Mateo married Siriaca Bernabe from a nearby barrio, and their marriage was blessed with 8 children. The oldest, a son, was named Alfredo or Eddie, who was only a few months older than me. The second, another son, was named Ernesto or P.I. The third, a son named Ronaldo or Small, as he looked like our grandfather. The fourth, a daughter, was named Teresita and is married to Dr. Jerry Canless and now lives in Orlando, Florida. The fifth is Romulo, who stayed with us when I was stationed at Naval Communication Station Philippines and he was also able to visit us in San Diego. The sixth is Arcadio, or Archie, who went to dental school but did not practice as he went abroad and settled in San Jose, California with his family. The seventh is Carlos, who still lives in Novaliches with his family. The youngest is Fernando. He owns several businesses and lives in Lipa City, Batangas. I have visited his 3 farms where he breeds fighting cocks, dogs, and racing horses. He owns a funeral home in the city of Lipa, province of Batangas. Chapter 1. Enlisting in the U.S. Navy. Working under the hot summer sun for days and days, digging and shoveling dirt was so backbreaking. He did this for more than 2 years. The only thing he could look forward to was on Sundays when he would attend the service at his brother's church. On many occasions, he would join the family for lunch. It was in one these occasions when he was introduced to the oldest daughter of the other pastor, Fausta Reyes. Quintin decided to go to the city to find a better job. He takes his carabao and cart and proceeded to Manila and temporarily finds a job as an all-around helper in a Catholic church in the city of Malate, a suburb of Manila. His many duties included cleaning the church and the facilities. On Sundays, he would also assist as an altar boy for the masses. Then he heard that the U.S. Navy was recruiting Filipinos. He tried to get information from anyone. He knew that there would be an examination, so he began studying and did a lot of praying. He was lucky enough to pass the exam. This was to be the turning point in his life. The dream of many young Filipinos is to be able to go to America. In his joy and excitement, he went to Luneta, a park in the city of Manila, and let his aging carabao loose as he knew he would soon board a transport ship that will take him and his fellow recruits to America. Today there is a monument in Luneta which could be a tribute to the carabao found roaming freely in that park many years ago. Quintin was sworn into the U.S. Navy in July 1929. He took his training in Great Lakes, Illinois. It was here that he became involved with an American woman. It was unclear where she lived, but he fathered a son, and they named him Carlos RAMIL. While stationed aboard several ships in the Pacific Fleet, my dad was a boxer in the Navy and was at one time the all-Navy champion in the 118-pound division. One of his teammates was Federico Ramirez, whose family also lived in Novaliches and has a son named Rico. We met for the first time in 1948 when their family returned to the Philippines from Rhode Island and stopped by to visit us in Hawaii. Today, Fred lives with his family in Suisun, California. He is a retired Master Sergeant from the U.S. Air Force. As a Navy man, my dad fulfilled what was expected of him by his parents. This has been a tradition that is still going on today. Parents expect their children to provide for them. The goal of most Filipinos is to finish school so he or she can help their parents provide for the rest of the siblings. Early on, my father established a scholarship for his younger sister and his oldest niece. He helped Consolacion and Maria Ramil Llanos finish their studies. These 2 ladies became nurses and in turn helped their own families. I remember my manang, older relative Mareng, providing financial assistance for her siblings even after she had her own family. This is a very noble tradition common to many Filipino families. He continued to write Fausta, and they were exchanging letters every week. After 4 years in the U.S. Navy, my dad returned to the Philippines to marry the woman who would become our mother, Fausta M. Reyes. I believe that at one time, my mother told me that they were engaged for almost 6 years. The marriage took place in Novaliches on December 2, 1934. Looking at their wedding picture, I noticed that one of the bridesmaids was Tia Akang, the wife of Uncle Mateo, and one of the sponsors was Faustino Reyes, a brother of my grandfather. Lolo Tino, as we knew him, was one of the first Filipinos recruited by the American Pineapple Company to work as a laborer in Hawaii. He was recruited in 1928. It was my father who met him in Hawaii and advised him to return to the Philippines before the war broke out. He returned and was able to buy land in the outskirts of Novaliches. Dad continued to be stationed aboard many ships in the Pacific Fleet, including one that was part of the Great White Fleet that sailed around the world. After 4 years, my mother gave birth to her first child. I was born on April 12, 1938. To my surprise, when I obtained a copy of my birth certificate from Mary Johnston Hospital in 1956, my birth date was recorded as April 11th. It was obvious that the nurse who entered the date came to work on April 11th, but I was born 10 minutes after midnight on the night of April 11th, and so for 17 years I celebrated my birthday on the 12th. Today I do the only sensible thing and celebrate it on both days. Sometime in 1941, my dad received orders to the USS Chaumont, a submarine tender home ported in Sangley Point Naval Base, Cavite, Philippines. My parents rented an apartment in Ermita, Manila, close to the highway that goes to Cavite, and he would commute from Ermita to Sangley Point Navy Base by bus. In November of 1941, the USS Sargo, a submarine, tied up to the USS Chaumont, a submarine tender, needing a steward and was asking for volunteers. My dad volunteered and became a crew member of the USS Sargo, SS-188. In early December, the USS Sargo was ordered to hold an open house in Manila Bay, which was very close to his apartment in Ermita, a suburb of the city of Manila. He was off that weekend, but returned to his submarine to pick up his paycheck. He planned to take me with him, but my mom said that she was going to give me a bath, and that was the only reason I stayed behind. When my dad arrived at his ship, he was barely on board when Japanese planes began bombing the city of Manila. This was December 8, 1941. The very same time Pearl Harbor was being attacked. As the USS Sargo was backing away from the pier, it was hit by a torpedo fired by one of the fighter planes. The Sargo lost one of its propellers. The crew could not help but see the devastation Manila suffered. My dad saw the whole city burning. He honestly believed that he lost his family. With one propeller, the Sargo still managed to reach Australia, where my dad again volunteered for another submarine to go on a patrol. It was his compadre, Brigido Tamayo, my godfather, who advised him to rest for a while and not go on another patrol just yet. This is what saved him, as the submarine he was to board did not return and was listed as lost at sea. At this time, he was due for rotation and received orders for Panama, where he was to become the commissary store officer. He was promoted to chief. As a commissary store officer, he was in charge of a big grocery store where many Panamanian women worked. It was there he met Ina, one of the store's cashiers. Believing that he no longer had a family, he and Ina lived together and became lovers. In 1942, Ina gave birth to a daughter and they named her Gwen. The three of them lived together as a family, and he loved his daughter very much. He told me that Gwen would run after him when he left for work and always ran to greet him when he returned. Unknown to him, he also had a daughter, Norma, who was born during the war. When he left Panama, he asked one of his men, Petty Officer Manuel Archuleta, to look after his loved ones for him. As his chief, Mr. Archuleta had a very good relationship with my father and considered him as his idol and mentor. He not only took care of Ina, but he also married her and adopted her daughter. They did not have any children of their own. Eventually, they settled in San Diego, California. Gwen grew up not knowing any other father except for Mr. Archuleta.